items may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by open meeting law. So I'm going to call the meeting to order at 5:05 p.m. Thank you all for coming. And public comment, do we have any public comment from the committee? Do we have any public comment? I can't see, so no hands.
Is it just Pauline and Amanda on? Okay, and Nancy.
Okay, seeing no public comment, we're gonna skip approval of the minutes till our next meeting. Those are just getting finished up. And we're gonna just go right into ongoing business, our salary grid and discussion. So Nancy, do you want to come join us? Because you kind of did some math for us that you can walk us through. Thank you. So FY24 shift 1, which removes current grade 1 and shifts every employee one pay range, one grade higher, placed at a step closest to their current step, and it's a 2.54% between steps.
And these are all based on the grids that Donna sent to me, so. Going by what she sent. So if you look at that, the total cost is $47,000. The
Nancy, can I just make sure
Yeah.
I understand? So every employee moved up one grade?
that's the scenario.
That's the
Donna
scenario,
had.
this particular scenario.
Yes.
Okay, but I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
And so
And for clarity, grade, not step.
Correct.
So someone was previously like a grade 8, step 6, now they're a grade 9, step 6.
Well, the step is closest to.
Well,
what
I'm
they're-
sorry, the step,
Whatever the
yes,
step is. Okay,
Because
those-
we removed grade 1,
okay.
right.
so. That was the first FY24 shift 1 scenario.
and
Okay.
254 between steps.
Yeah.
What is our current clerical contract?
3%.
3%. So this doesn't get them even with our clerical stat. Is that correct? I just want to
Correct.
make sure I have that at the 254. Because our goal would kind of be 3 to match our clerical.
The variable, our employees, I just put the increase onto what the budget was for the year, because there's no way to
Correct.
know what it would be. So their total budget got increased by 2.5%.
And so that comes out to 47,140.
Yeah.
And Julie, do you have any questions on that one?
No.
Okay. So next, can we go to the next one? Or are you guys still perusing people? Can we go to the next one? Or you still, okay. So the next one, option 2 is drop step 1, 3% between grades, move steps 1, keep employees at current grade, and step 3 between steps.
So 3% between the steps instead of 2.5 in this
Correct.
scenario,
And
as
we-
well as dropping off step 1, but no movement in grade.
Correct.
Right.
But is this new enhancement in step 3 between steps? Something
It-
new, because wasn't there,
It's 3%
The
between the steps, which is what we are. now.
It's been there.
Oh, okay.
Employees
It's been there.
stay at the current grade and step. They don't move anywhere.
and that total cost was,
So all that one does
44.
is remove step 1.
And adds a step at the end.
Did the people that were in step 1 go into the step 2? I'm just curious.
I don't know that we,
There was only 1 or 2 people probably
Yeah,
because the
but-
rest of them are lifeguards that aren't on
Mhm.
currently on. So maybe there was a library aide
yeah,
or something.
maybe.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
So just to be clear, the new stuff isn't indicated on them.
No, just the new rate.
Okay.
and that comes out to 44,
610.
610, 74.
So similar impact.
The biggest difference there is that people don't move up one level.
Correct,
Yes.
that's
And
the
the
difference.
percentage between the steps.
It's over $3,000. We can move people, and it's not a dramatic cost increase. Because we were nervous about,
Well, we can.
Yeah.
but that's just in
I mean, I
my,
just have concern with the first one, moving people into new grades artificially, like we're just bumping everybody into a new grade. It's really not.
That's true. There's no validation for that.
Mm.
But let's finish, let's go
Yeah.
through them all and see.
I think I'm on the right one now.
Scenario two.
Scenario one,
One.
adjust grade one to minimum wage, adjust all step one accordingly. 2.54 between steps, employee stays at same grade and step. And again, that's the 2.4, number 3. And that was a total cost of almost half, 28,096.98. Scenario 2, if I'm going too fast, please tell me.
Yeah.
Scenario 2,
Yeah, hold on. Sorry, just to clarify, so in scenario one, the only people, employees, positions that would receive an increase are those going from grade, well, in grade one, with that adjustment to,
No, because
Oh,
they're
adjusted the
adjusting
rest of
step
them.
one all the way down, so
Gotcha.
that adjusts
okay,
across also.
thank you.
scenario 2 starts grade at 1550 as minimum wage, adjust all steps one accordingly, 2.2 between steps, employee remains at current grade and step. Okay,
So that just leaves one there, it just moves it to 1550.
Right.
And then adjust the grid accordingly, whatever two.
The grades.
So looking at this one, because
Mm-hmm.
I know what I'm gonna be going to,
Okay,
never mind. No, never mind.
okay. Scenario 3 uses minimum average from salary survey as step 1. 3% between steps. Employee remains at current step and grade.
oh, this is using the salary survey, it's a tool.
Correct. And the cost impact doing that one,
Like very little.
yeah, 25,287.
I get a penny.
Me
Huh?
too.
I said I get a penny.
I was noticing
too.
that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pennies.
And of course I
Yeah.
can look at myself because I know where I'm going, so I know.
Yeah.
I don't know everybody
Right.
else's off the top of my head, so.
No,
Scenario,
but I saw a lot that were like
Just a,
a penny.
yeah,
scenario 4.
yeah, it's another one.
Estimates a reasonable step 1 for each grade based on salary survey, adjusts each grade separately, employee remains at the current step and grade. And that cost is 10,644.55. We ready? Any,
Yeah, some aren't moving at all. That moves the pennies. Okay,
I'm not sure exactly how she determined what a reasonable step 1 was.
Yeah, I don't know either. I just went by what
didn't
she
speak
put
to
in
me.
the grid.
I was with her
so.
most of Saturday, but she didn't speak to me about how she did that, but okay.
step 5. Regrade 1 through 3 to grade 4. No change to rest of grid. Employees in grid 1 through 3 placed at the closest step rate in grade 4.
Yeah.
2,000.
No, no,
177.
Because the only people who are impacting are the lowest.
Category.
And the only thing I would say about that is when I looked at how many were in that bucket, because of the lifeguards, there aren't as many sitting in there now, but there's probably 3 or 4 different jobs that we took and we dumped them all into 4, which didn't have a lot of justification for why we would.
Well,
Dump
4
it
was
into
gonna,
4.
we, originally when we talked about trying to sort of reclassify the whole system of numbers, 4 was gonna become 1.
Right.
So they all,
But I think as we look at this one, that's the only thing I see about that one. It's like, it's kind of like to your point earlier, it's like, how do you
Mm.
dump them in without qualifying that they belong there?
Mm.
So just,
Yeah,
just.
I think we're trying to
observation.
make
Just an
13
observation.
grades to match that Winchton grid.
Right, and it was force fitting it.
Yeah.
Okay,
interesting, because we weren't using all of the grades anyway, so it was really more like 10 grades, which,
well, we were using 16 before, because
right,
we
but
didn't use
trying
the
to
last-
go, thinking we were gonna go to 13, even then, the couple of people in the first grade, we really weren't using more than 10 or utilizing for the vast majority of our employees more than 10 or 11 grades. So to try and take 16 and do that, it just,
it's hard.
And
it
then,
doesn't just slide over,
Slide
which
over.
we know.
and then scenario 6. Is that, yeah, eliminate grade 1 through 3, adjust grades 4 through 16 separately
Oh,
with the salary survey info.
right.
And that would be a cost of $12,287.60.
Yeah, this was also pennies.
Yes.
I would say based on one of the things that we observed as we tried to put this together was that the survey material was somewhat erratic. In that 2 or 3 towns, how they reported didn't seem like they were giving us the minimum and the maximums. And it might have been one-off employees that they were giving us their salary, you know, their one person salary, because it made no sense as you related to what the work was.
Mhm.
So it was hard to put the towns, you know, some of them had 4 towns that reported, but 2 of them were so bizarre that it's like, how do you justify that? And is the work the same, or because the town was a little bit smaller, is that person doing several things rather than the thing we named? Did you have any better sense of that, Julie? Because I don't know how much more information came in with the material that,
That was it.
yeah.
That was
And
it.
that has been traditionally one of the dilemmas, that small towns don't have a lot of people to deliver quality information back, or they're a little suspicious. They don't want to give you everything. They only want to give you something.
Right.
I don't know, does Fitchburg actually do one too? Do you know? And how does that work? They're a little bit bigger, so they.
Yeah,
they can
we
use bigger
use
towns.
Collins Institute to do
Ah,
this.
So if someone does. it,
They
that's-
hired out,
Yeah,
but we have other people that will, and they really just ask for kind of like a spreadsheet of either the unions, because they're all in
Ah.
the union. So we'll
Makes
say
a
they're right
difference.
online
yeah,
and they have the 3-year forecast out,
right.
or they'll ask for 2023 FY 2023 payroll.
Yeah, it's really hard to, I would guess Concord is the same
They
way.
we just completed one for
Yeah.
the town did.
The town,
Right, I looked at their report that they did, it was very extensive and it was beautifully done.
yeah,
By, I would guess the third party?
yes,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yes, it was
Trust me,
beautifully
there
done.
ain't nothing going on in the finance office.
It was beautifully done.
yeah, they hired an outside company,
Yeah,
you know.
so,
And there
Trying
was
to
no
find-
movement on that, by the way. So it was a presentation.
Yeah.
To the select board.
right,
These are our findings. So I don't personally know, it's the
It-
next
I
steps
couldn't
for the
find any
town meeting.
record, yeah, that they had anything, what they were gonna do with it next.
Right,
So-
and I don't know, is it a town meeting floor thing
Right.
for them? I don't know.
Well, or is it become a contractual thing for each union group within that representation?
Right, and it's
Right,
not
'cause-
always easy to see that.
Correct, because now this outside company says this is what the DPW staff should be making. Well, now we have to go negotiate that at town meeting.
Right.
each contract to update that.
Because we did go back and try to pull the information that originally came from the consultant. We hadn't looked at it much, but she did do some survey stuff.
Mhm.
And we really tried to unearth that, but most of it was union contracts. It wasn't just survey material, it was what was easy to pull
Oh,
from a
online.
database that was online about the clerical credit union or the, whatever the credit union happened to be. So it wasn't easy to pull information that's quality information that you then want to change a whole grid around when it's so erratic around its presentation. So that was difficult to get to.
I would say that I don't think scenario 5 and 6 would work, where you're dropping the first 3 grades. Because then, right now, there's 4 grades between grade 1 and grade 5. You move all those into grade 4, there's only 1 grade between a library page and library assistant.
Right.
For
I
for
was
instance,
concerned
so-
about that as well. Mhm.
I don't think that would work. At
I
this
think,
point,
I think because the one was already below, I mean, we knew that we wanted to move 1 into better than the what's going to happen to the market in terms of minimum wage. And that was the only job that we had in that one, the only job that was in there was the library page. And it was, in my mind, it's easy to say, we expect that job to be at kind of a higher caliber and just dump them into 2 because that's the closest thing. It's like, they were probably a high 1 anyway. And it's one of the, aren't they mostly high school? Kids are coming after high school. And the funny part is, I hadn't thought about this until you do this work, but nobody that's ever a library aide is ever going to go up the steps. They're never going to go up the steps because they don't stay long enough to go from 1 step to 2 step to 3 step. They won't stay there 8 years
Right.
as a library page.
Right.
So they're always going to be sitting at the bottom. So they're almost like a non-entity in that regard. If you put them in 2, they're going to sit at the bottom of 2 until they go off to college or do whatever they do.
Yeah, and I
So-
think, where we currently have 3% between steps, I don't know if I'd want to reduce that.
Right, that was a dilemma as we played with that and tried to move it. We felt as though that was a pretty dramatic change. And that 3 made sense. And if we continue to move the range like we have each year, to say, okay, we're not sure exactly what everybody else is going to do, but we've got to do something. We got to move something like we did last year. Then, but keeping the 3% made sense because if you get a 2.5% movement of the range, and then you get your normal, if you're not sitting at 8, step 8, you get your normal range, then you're getting a 3% and a 2.5%. So you're getting a 5.5% for the year, essentially, except for the people who are sitting in step 8. And the only way they can do better than however we make the range is to increase the value of the work that they do or do another job that might come up. We also still believe that that we know that there are a few jobs that we looked at that we know probably should be a higher than what they are today. But there weren't a lot of jobs. There were just a handful. And I think that we struggled with those over the period about which ones they were and where should they go. And that's still true. That is still true for those particular jobs. But if you put that aside for a minute and say, which of these works best? I think hopefully we've done enough work that we can
Yeah.
pick one that makes the best sense.
I
And then I
almost-
do think we have to address the second issue, which is, are there any jobs that really should change? Which is a separate reckoning.
Right, once we look at this,
Correct.
what one are we picking?
Correct.
Now, let's see where, if there's some 1 or 2 people that need to be tweaked into those right,
Because the job has changed.
Correct.
The work has changed.
the work is true.
I feel like the one that says drop step 1, 3% between grades, remove step 1, step the second.
Where I'm
One.
sitting looking, yeah.
I feel like that one probably makes the most sense. I'm not sure of the funding.
Yeah,
At
but that
44.6, that's high. So, I mean, I like that, and that's similar to what the clerical union had done.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, yeah, because whatever we do is gonna be the 3, because I feel has to be consistent with that clerical.
so my question is,
when you're saying that's high,
Mhm.
what are you
Well-
basing that on?
Well, keep in mind that they've already increased 24
Right.
by 2.5% from last year plus I mean, so the normal budgeting had to go up by that much always anyway. And this is now to add
An
additional on
cost
top of
to
that.
what was.
So if the fiscal budget was budgeted to increase at the normal rate, it wouldn't be better than 2.5 because people were in the steps and they would have to move. So maybe it was gonna be 3.5% total. That's what they budgeted, so that is the question. I guess, I'm not sure. I guess I anticipated that one of the reasons we talked about retro, because we thought we were gonna find that a lot of people changed their grade. I'm not sure that, that we have found that, and because we added 2.5% last year, I'm not sure that we would have done any different even with this process. Because what did it tell us? The survey really didn't give us information about anything. We added 2.5% because we didn't know enough. So we just guessed, at least do that.
But that would have been about typical.
That would have been typical.
Well,
Because
or
that's what the
two,
market
if that's what
rolls.
the
Huh.
Clerical, or 3, if that's what the clerical. So you're
Last
talking.
year,
There
they
isn't-
went 2.5 last year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So that answers, is that what,
Well, they adjusted their whole grid. They dropped the first 3 steps. So step 4 became step 1.
For clericals. Did that change other people or did it just change the top 3? Like this question is.
It changed everybody, right?
Mm.
Yeah. And that cost was $54,000, $58,000 for 17 people.
$58,000 for 17 people. We're talking 46,000 for 85. Right? When you do the math like that, that's 17 people.
But the
have
question is,
Multiply that by
54,000.
3.
is that what's really necessary is to add an additional amount to the 24? Or should we just be looking at the few people that should change and say on July 1st, they're gonna, instead of being a grade 6, they're gonna be a grade 7? Because the work defines that differently because something has changed about the work. So I don't know if we've proven that we didn't do enough last year.
I don't think that's how it came across initially, though.
I know, I
So,
know. I don't think
yeah.
we knew enough at the time. That we thought, I really thought that we were gonna find that we were gonna have a lot of misalignment, and I'm not sure we found that.
And I really don't think our current board of selectmen or even the finance committee, when you do the rationalization of 17 people at 54,000 and we've come in at 46 for 85. When you do that math, we're all stars.
So my question is, which grid compares to the clerical grids? Do we have one?
The 3%, the one. you wrote.
No,
That's
their
the
rates,
Oh, I
their
apologize.
ranges.
Position is the administrative assistant.
Okay,
So the
okay.
Is that the
F-
only position that's in there?
It kind of crosses over.
And is that comparable to
Well,
those?
the-
We have several levels of those probably.
the FY24 shift 1 puts that position above the clerical. Because that would be 2313, and scenario 2 equals the clerical for that position. So
Scenario 2 equals the.
equals the administrative assistant position,
I'm sorry, what was the scale of this?
2250. It is step 1.
Which makes it between an 8 and a 9 for the SAP in 24.
I also like scenario 1 because I feel like that makes sense as well. Adjusting grade 1 to minimum wage, at least as a starting point, which adjusts the rest of the grid. But I would keep, it's what?
The 2.
Yeah, I would keep the 3% instead of 2.5. So I'd like to see that.
Is that their projection for 25 or is that their 24? The clerical, is that the change for
That's the FY 24 rate.
the 24 rate? Okay, I just want to make sure. And what's the max of theirs on?
Don't have the max.
Okay.
I do, but I can't look at it.
So most of ours ended up as grade 8s,
Step eights.
grade 8.
Oh, okay. The admin.
And the start of grade 8 is 21, 22, and the start of grade 9 is 23, 13. So it's kind of in the middle between those two.
I can tell you what that is.
But we don't know what the, so we don't know if it's way out of sync or not.
I can tell you what that range is,
Okay.
because I just posted clerical union positions with that range. So our grade 8 at the administrative assistant positions,
Mhm.
okay. Their range
25, is that what we're?
No, we're at
20 FY 24.
24.
So the clerical union FY 24 pay range for the administrative assistants is 2250 to 2821.
Okay, so it's more like a 9. Because our 9 is
Yeah.
23 and 28. So it's just slightly off. But that's the only thing that's in the clerical is that one grouping.
Yeah, I mean, that's filled. We don't have any other.
Library assistants, do they have a?
They have junior and they have senior, so we just have library. assistant.
Right.
Which one is it? I don't know, but
I can't remember, we moved a couple of different. Are all of them 8s, Julie, do you know?
All
The
administrative,
For
unless they're executive.
the most part,
Executives, I think, are
is the executive
grade
is higher.
10.
Yeah,
For the rest of them, 8s is right.
Mhm.
That's okay.
so my thought is I like the second one.
Mhm.
Drop step 1, the one that you discussed.
Mhm.
I keep it at 3.
I'm sorry,
I keep it at 3%.
Yeah.
That would be.
But that doesn't line up with the clerical units for the admins, right?
Well,
not for this year.
but
okay,
next
but
year,
you
it's
could
slightly off
maybe-
for this year.
oh, because you haven't run the numbers for 25 to be able
Till
to see.
Decide.
If you do another adjustment in
How big the
25,
range is gonna be for
26.
25. We probably would. But the question is, do you do an additional one for 24 and then another one for 25? That's really at the crux of the question. I don't know, did she actually do
And how-
a grid, Nancy, that had this particular scenario on a grid form or not? She didn't send me one, so I
No,
didn't see
that's
one.
one I did.
Oh, you did that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And how far off are we? What's the change? Difference? From the clerical to ours?
Oh.
That's, could we move, is that me?
It's kind of hard to see because you don't see it in this form. You kind of
I
see
know.
it as a calculator.
So a grade 8 would go from 2122 to 2688.
We didn't even.
Really?
Because of.
If
the
we drop-
focus and then
If we
didn't
drop the
go
step 1.
Yeah. But that wouldn't really change 8 if the only change would be, it's already at 3% anyway. Why would it change 8?
I
If
don't
you drop
understand.
1,
Yeah, you put a step on the end.
but why would
So
that?
So step
change
2
it?
is your new step 1, step 8 is your new step 7, so we need to add that extra.
Oh, this, I'm talking about grade, not step. I
Oh,
apologize.
okay. Yeah, so it's still grade 8 and FY 24, nothing's changed.
Nothing would change that because we didn't touch that. Okay.
What's the change amount between,
So it would be 2122 to 2688.
right, 21, 22? And what
If
about
that's
people?
step 1.
No, because you said there's a little money difference. I'm trying to see, do we just change our,
In our SAP.
the 2102?
Well, that's what I was wondering. Is there a way to, if that's the only similar position between the SAP and the clerical union, and start in the middle, work our way down and work our way up in the grid? So if we used the clerical wage In FY twenty-four, the starting is 2201.50.
It skews the grid though, if that's the only one you change.
No, it would change, all of them would change in accordance based on
That
that
dollar amount,
So you
if it's
adjust
30
all the
cents.
step ones. And then,
by the
Grade
same
is set.
percentage that
If
it's separated
it's
by in the grade now. So let's say it's 5% between each grade. And some, whatever that split is,
But that's like changing the whole grid because of
Mm.
one job.
to match the.
I think that the cost would be higher too.
Yeah.
Would
Because
be
you're gonna
much
go from 21-22 to 22-50,
Mhm,
and then everyone else is gonna increase also.
mhm.
So it's
That
gonna be
would be
more than
higher.
a 47.
Well, food for thought.
Mhm.
Look at that.
Food for
And maybe
thought.
not on this grid, but just moving forward, like what is the end goal?
Mhm.
I think we have to keep those rates in consideration.
Because it's always gonna be a run and catch up probably
Mhm.
because of how they do their contracts. We probably have similar things in some of the other contracts with positions
Mhm.
because all the new police jobs that we never had before in the SAP, they have a union contract price. And we're trying to put them into a space where we never had them before when we haven't really looked at what's the union contract price,
Mhm.
right? You know, did you follow that, what that was? Because all these on-call folks, we never really had them in the SAP.
Right.
So we're trying to put them somewhere, but we're not comparing it to what their counterparts are that are actually working regular full-time
Right.
operations jobs. And if I'm an on-call police person, then should I be matched to that job and not us trying to figure out where they belong in the SAP? They weren't in the SAP ever. It's an odd way. Why wouldn't they have gone in the union? I'm just curious.
The civilian traffic members, is that what we're talking about?
No,
The
police-
reserve,
It's the police as an example. I think both.
Reserved.
the
the
reserve
reserve-
officers,
Yeah. And the on-call folks,
hours,
just
Well,
hours.
yeah, they're not full-time,
Oh, so they couldn't get all the benefits of it. They could only get.
none, yeah.
You would think they would make it an adjustment for that in the contract because it makes sense to put them in the same
But one of the-
position.
I'm trying to remember when the chief came and spoke to
Mhm.
us, and I think part of it was it's hard to get
Mhm.
people. So if the rates aren't that, that bit higher, they're not getting a lot of hours, but they need to attract folks to do it because we can't not have.
But they still could have built that into their own plan. I mean, they wouldn't get benefits probably.
Oh.
But
They don't now.
no, for those folks, but which is why they're not in there because they're not full-time employees. It's just an odd way to do it, to try to force fit them into.
It's like what we did with the civilian traffic members, they're paid a rate out of the police contract, but
Correct.
they're in the SAP. So if you look on the classification schedule, you'll see the asterisk that says refer to
And that would be
the
similar.
contract.
Those particular
Mhm.
folks might be a similar situation, but because if they're working side by side, the ones who are in the union contract, they would want to at least be comparable to those folks. It's just an unusual situation. We haven't done enough work to see whether we placed them properly because we never had them before.
So my question, and I don't know if you know this, but so such as the building commissioner,
Mhm.
the
Are we
original,
looking at a specific one?
the drop stuff.
Okay.
So I put the budget in there. So
First, on page one. Okay,
So the actual
77?
budget is 97,000.
Go ahead.
okay.
Because it was based on previous building. commissioner. So can that retro be taken out of that line and reduce the actual cost? You know what I'm saying? Because we're gonna
Yeah, because-
excess in that line.
Mhm.
So can't the retro be covered by that?
Yeah,
line,
it's really no
essentially.
extra cost if it's actually surplus of money sitting
Right.
there.
And as long as it's the same salary line, they
And who
that can
else
be
has
done.
that situation?
Million use. But I don't know what's being
Yeah.
paid out of that.
Right.
And probably mine, because Amy's in mine. We're together and that didn't get
Oh,
pulled to
okay.
December. But I don't know.
And we had a
what
consultant.
consultants- I don't-
So there are some anomalies in timing and placement of who's in there now versus what the line said.
Yeah, so it might
Well,
have
they
been,
cover
but
if a job's open for 3 months, that salary is already budgeted
exactly,
for the year. So there's now that excess of 3 months of salary sitting in a bucket
which could
that can
offset.
now be applied to this
It might
retro.
not Be,
And no line item transfer to take any of that, correct?
You could transfer it through. out.
No, there has not been already.
yeah. see,
Not
that's
that I
what
know
don't
of.
know.
That's-
The consultant.
Because as a
That would be a
consultant, for
help.
example,
That
yeah,
would
I'm
be a
just gonna
help thing.
use, the finance director left at a salary.
Mm-mm.
Well, then she came back, but as a consultant. So it was much more money that she came back at. So there might not be a cushion because we paid her more than what the budgeted for that person.
And
Mhm.
that's, I think only Heather would be able to.
Right.
determine that.
Mhm.
And we also probably brought in some people at a higher step than the previous person might have been.
Then to get them.
Over the course of a year. That could happen.
I don't know about
Depends,
that.
yeah.
And same with the assistant, we're hiring another one, but. I don't know.
Like right now, that
I
land
think-
use director is sitting empty, but we have a
I think that's
consultant
too
sitting
much.
there. So based on what he,
Right.
But conservation administrative assistant,
Right.
6,000, there's 12,000 in there.
So it
that
does
would be
say that
covered.
that particular one probably has some pluses and minuses in the cost.
Right.
But, it would be nice to see what the grid would look like if we did that.
Mhm.
I thought she had done that, but I guess, she didn't send that along.
This is-
This is with the 3%. Oh, this is the old one. This is the same as it currently is.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
No.
I just spotted a couple of. Yep. Yep. That's it. Unless I just picked up the wrong thing.
Yeah, I may pick the one thing you said.
Cause this is 24, this is the current. And 73, 67, 61.
Right, but this is gonna be your new step 8. So these are,
Oh,
we're gonna drop.
oh, so you'll have to change all of them across.
Right.
Oh, I
This
see.
one's gonna drop.
Okay.
I didn't just.
Okay,
we just
gotcha.
didn't wait. Yeah.
That's easy. So it's this one.
Maybe because we haven't.
Nancy, I'm not quite sure. Can you tell me? I'm looking through the one I like,
Is
so
this
far.
really everybody? It seems like it's.
Is this,
Well-
because I can't find like the public safeties. I don't know what the position's called. Amanda's position.
She's not in it for FY24, so there's no retro.
Oh, okay.
Oh, because it was in the
She's still
That
in
would
the
be-
union.
So this is a new position that she's going to for FY
the SAP.
25.
Yeah.
And her old position retro would have been in the clerical. Okay, thank you. Yep.
So were we not at 3% between steps in 24?
No, we are.
And we're still gonna be at 3% between the steps.
Correct.
So I'm not
But
sure,
we're just dropping the first step.
dropping the first step.
Mhm.
Oh, I thought we were dropping
So
the first
out-
grade.
No, out with that, tack it on the end.
Okay,
So,
and we're doing
Because we
that
often don't
because-
hire, we rarely hire at step 1. So it gives folks that additional leverage to climb.
So I think the math may not be correct, but it then says that we've adjusted the grid by another 3%. Approximately. It isn't exact math, but when you added that to the end, took one off.
Mhm.
You in essence have changed the grid by about 3%, isn't that correct?
Mhm.
Right. Does that make sense? So we already did a 2.5%. And if we did this, it would add another 3% to top of the 24.
Right, which still brings it way under the cost for the other units. Per employee,
right,
but
yes. So
it's not even close, really.
can we go now? is there one, we'll start with Sue, we'll just go around the tape, or Nancy, Julie, looking at this, do you have a recommendation that you think?
The only thing I don't
And
think
then
we
we'll-
could do 5 or 6 because of that. Dropping the first 3 grades without reassigning the rest of the grades, I don't think works.
Yeah, no, scenario 6 wasn't at all mine.
And I think
So I'm
we-
taking that out just because I don't want to look at it again.
the 3% as soon as
Yeah.
that, so
So that changes all of them.
that's my opinion.
Yeah. But some of them are 2.2 between 2.54. I'd like to see those all at 3%. Not change the percentage between steps. I mean. Yeah,
I
I
thought
think,
there was one other one that she did, and I don't see it, and it was to drop one,
grade 1 or step,
grade 1.
Yeah.
And not change anybody, not
think that's-
just step, but grade 1,
Mm-hmm.
and not shift everybody, just drop one.
Mm-hmm.
We keep all the rest in, so the only
Oh,
one who
that's
moves
the
is
one
the,
that she sent yesterday.
5, right?
She,
oh, just the library folks would move to 2, and everybody else would stay the same.
Right.
And because the 3 was already there, that's the one I thought I was seeing. But I
so
don't see
the only people that would change would be library pages.
that's right.
So I don't think I did that one because the cost would probably be $200.
But that is one
Sort
of the other options. To just drop one, grade 1,
Mhm.
and leave everybody else the way they are, so we end up with 16 grades.
But then there's no,
But there's
There'll
no
be no,
impact.
there'll be no
Right.
impact, but that we haven't proven that we need an impact.
Then what do we spend 2.5 years doing?
Well,
No, I'm serious.
no, it was a very valuable thing because I think that we took a look at those job descriptions and cleaned them up to a greater degree. And I think that we have found that there is a whole handful of jobs that need to be realigned. 5 or 6 that we know have changed and that, unfortunately, the survey isn't giving us enough information to tell us whether we have, comparable to the market or not.
Right. But I'm uncomfortable saying to the 85 employees that are in this group, that the clerical group, and I'm just using them because I know that number. There are 6 other unions, or I don't even know how many. The clerical union got what they got in a $57,000 bracket with 17 people. Right, so they got these raises, these impacts, these cost of living, salary grid movement for a total of $57,000, and we need to make it fair and equitable for our 85 within this group as well. That's,
Because that is our charge at the end
Correct.
of the day.
is
Is
that
to
the
really be
staff
able to look at.
employees are equal and running, carrying, going with the 7 other people in a contract.
I appreciate that, and that is a concern, but it's one job.
Mm.
And what we're saying is we're gonna change all the levels because of that one job.
But I think all the other jobs fall in other brackets with your department heads. And there are department head unions out there. I was in a department head union in Maynard. So these department heads could now unionize. It could be. Right, and go out
Absolutely
and
could
do
be.
their, so do we really want to start that drive?
It's not an easy thing to take a look at all the unions and how it impacts the SAP because there's so many
Variables.
variables.
I was gonna say it's often not apples to apples,
Okay.
so.
I think I'm stuck on the drop step 1 is my
The second one,
number 1, and then the scenario 1, but with an adjustment of the 3% between steps, starting at minimum wage.
So,
With obviously not just minimum wage, because
so
Yeah,
that
add in
essentially
percent,
adds
so say
3%
15.50
to
or
the
so.
24.
We'll cover ourselves for a little bit, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because, yeah,
because last year it went up to $15 and
right.
we're now a year older, so I would add in
Yep.
that.
So if we do that, that adds 3% to 24. Essentially it does, because by adding that step, the
Yeah.
one higher
see what
step,
you're
that's
saying,
what it does. So then the question is, will we do something in addition to recommend for 25? I would think so,
I would think so
Right,
too. I
we
think
just had to
that's what
get-
we're gonna,
correct.
24 squared away before we can
Right.
consider what 25
and then
is.
that's where the movement's gonna. come
So
into
the
play.
justification to increase by 3% to 24, so that we would have essentially done 5.5%
Mhm.
to the grid.
Mhm.
The survey doesn't help us with that.
Mm-mm.
It's not easy for us to say. We can certainly say that that we believe the market will move enough, and
Mhm.
this may put us in better alignment because we can spot a couple of places, but we can't spot all the levels that way. And the clerical union certainly is a good place to say that this is
Mhm.
one of the places that we looked at, why we thought we had to do it that way.
Internally, right? And I think, the goal is to be competitive with our surrounding communities that are comparable. Just how competitive do we want to be? So I think we have to see the numbers. So I would like to see that scenario one cost out with that 3% between steps, starting at, say, minimum wage. So if we said minimum wage was
Well, I
15, we get the
I think we're
2.5% on
The
it.
minimum wage, because if you start and you drop grade 1, and we've all agreed that we don't need grade 1, it's silly to have it.
Okay,
Then you
Yep.
just start with grade 2, you're already at 1530,
okay.
and then you add to it, and you don't skew the whole grid.
And then just change the steps to 3%.
Well, the steps are 3%,
Well,
you're gonna
not on
add
this
to it.
grid, it's not.
right? You added it
I want
wrong.
to see what scenario one will cost if we change that 2.54% to 3%.
And drop off grade 1.
Correct.
So
And
Those are
and
my
I think you
top
add
two.
17, whether we end up putting somebody in 17 is, it becomes the new 16, if you will.
I would do that. If we're gonna drop the first one, I would put the 17 in there.
Yeah, so that you end up to have 16 levels of opportunity, if you
Yeah,
will.
if that's the ultimate goal, is keeping 16.
And,
Yep.
and mine is, the same. This first one, step 1, 3 between grades. And my second,
One right after.
I don't know if it's
Scenario one,
I don't know if it's scenario 1 or scenario
Okay.
2. What is scenario 1?
scenario two starts at 1550
Oh, no,
and adjust one step accordingly, 2.2 between steps.
yeah, I would go 3 again.
I was gonna say scenario 2 at 3% between the
Scenario,
steps
yeah.
versus 2.2.
I'll
Correct.
have to see that.
That's where I'm at.
So those, anybody else?
So would you rename the 1 and 2, the 2 primary cases?
Yes. I'd like to see
So
both.
just, would you say them out loud so I can?
Yeah, I have 3. I have the drop step 1, 3% between grades, which removes step 1, keeps employees at the current grade and step 3% between steps, I think is
That's your
the
first.
grid that
My
we,
first.
mine too.
Okay.
The one called scenario 1, adjust grade 1 to minimum wage. Adjust all step 1 accordingly, it's going to automatically 3% rather than 2.54% between steps. Yeah.
But you just said to drop grade 1, so are we
Yeah.
adjusting it or dropping?
Well, based on what Sue said, we would drop it.
Drop it.
So that would be,
Step 2, grade 2, step 1 would be $15.
she said?
Says minimum wage,
What's the minimum?
15.
15. I think
But that
grade
was
2
as
is
of last
1530,
January,
I
right?
think.
Yes,
But
it
there's
It was
is.
no-
already
But I
1530.
don't think,
So it's still 15, but I would say, well, that changed.
Well, it's
in-
already 1530 now.
Yeah, so that's what you're saying. So drop grade 1,
Then you
so-
already have, you already
You're
started
already
above the minimum wage.
and then they're already
Yeah,
at minimum to
15.30.
1530. So how this reads is adjust grade 1 to minimum wage, adjust all step one accordingly, 2.54% between steps, blah, blah. So what we're saying is we're gonna drop grade one. So the step one in grade two is 1530. That would be the new starting point. And then adjust the 2.54% between steps to be 3% is a different scenario two that we'd like to see moving forward. And then Wendy or Joanna,
Scenario two with
which,
3%.
With 3% in between.
yeah, so as it
Scenario
reads,
two,
That one
to
is the
drop
one.
step one.
it's to
No.
start at
Starts the
1550.
grid at 1550. Adjusts all
Step ones
step
accordingly,
ones accordingly to 3%.
instead of 2.2 between
Yep.
steps. So that'll be our, now our
Grade
third
one.
scenario.
Keep grade one, step one. at
Grade one
15.
stays there, starts at 1550. What is that gonna be? Made me think of another one. We could start. If we dropped off grade one, started grade two, step one at 1550.
But you don't need to.
Yeah.
Then you have to change the whole grid. You won't need to change the grid. It's already 1530.
So we're asking your historical knowledge. So the government did this last minimum wage was 2024. It was a 3-year
Mhm.
and 2024 finished. So if they come out with a new minimum wage and it's 575. Is there a way we can automatically make sure our minimum wage goes to that 15?
No,
So-
I think you just bring everybody in at step two or step three, whatever it is. to
Okay,
make
as
sure you-
we're bringing them in, okay.
Because it's such a small population that we're talking about that
Mhm.
particular group.
Mhm.
That that's what we did before. We didn't bring them in at the minimum step one. We brought them in at 2 or 3, whichever made sure that we gave them minimum wage.
Above the minimum.
Because it's really one group of people, but
And
everybody else is much higher.
so if we're at 1530 per se,
Mm-hmm.
FY 25 would go up another. And by the time there would be another announcement.
Yeah.
Per se, we'd probably be, that would probably start saying FY 26, let's say. Because we haven't heard anything yet, and we're about to hit FY 25.
Right.
But they're going on calendar year, that's the
They do it in
difference.
January.
So I would think we would be hearing that there would be some sort of announcement soon.
I'd make a guess it might go to 1550, but, or 15 and a quarter.
Last time, they
went
did
up
a
about-
bigger jump and the last jumps were 25 cents, right?
25 cents, right.
So,
Yep.
yeah. That's why I think we'd be
So
safe
if we're at
there for a little bit.
1530 already, that would help.
And we're gonna go up again.
And then we'll go up
in-
again in 25.
Yep.
What do you like? It's on to you.
No, I'm good.
With those
Looking
three.
at those three, that covers what I'd want to see.
And what about Sue?
Yeah, those three fit for me. I have a preference for one over the others, but they all have a reasonable nature to them.
All right. So now, next steps. Because we need to see
Numbers.
just those three. And is it too much work to now, with those three, show us what 25 would look like?
Tell me what 25 is gonna be.
That's our next
Yeah, we
decision. It's not random. That was, now that those are the three scenarios, we could say. See, we kind of have to pick one before we,
Can do that, okay.
Right.
you can't do a 25 grid. I mean,
And I
I
think what-
suppose you could, I suppose, if we chose. I mean, do we just want to see another 3 on top? What does clerical have
3.
in FY 25? 3 again, right?
'Cause
3
they're
again,
dropping-
right?
They're dropping more.
Do you see what
FY
I'm saying?
25. It's on the website.
If we took the 3 scenarios.
So one of the.
conjured up
was 78,000
25
for the
at
next
a
year.
2.5%.
Well, and what's the other thing we looked at what's the state gonna
So,
do?
there you
Because
go.
the state will make an announcement about what happens to state employees, and the feds will make an announcement about what happens to Fed employees. We took a look at that the last time. So when we tried to decide what's the right percent, so what's the market doing? What are most companies doing? What's the feds doing? What are the states doing? And what are people seeing? And then we adopted one of them.
And you, still not on the website. I forgot about that.
Can I ask what the number was?
Last year was 2.5.
2.5.
I
I
think
think
the
the year two
feds-
was 74.
the feds
so I
only
think
did
I'm
two.
Direction every
three
year.
more
I forget,
grades,
yeah.
I think the feds only did
steps,
two.
I mean,
But we thought that
And
was
what
a
did
little weak.
Do you know what the clerical got for 25?
I was trying to pull it up. I forget that's not on the website yet.
cost year two is 74,000 for them, so they must have dropped
sounds
two
like
more
another two
steps.
steps.
And there's only that one group of employees in there.
Mhm.
Did any of the other contracts change dramatically like that, where they drop grids and stuff?
Police seem to do that every time, they dropped it.
DPW
did
did
something,
something,
did
yeah,
it too.
they will, yeah. So FY
In terms of it
25,
kind of adjusting where people sat or where
They adjusted the grid itself,
the grid
people
itself.
stayed where they were.
Okay, people stayed where they were, which is kind of what we've been doing to this.
so to answer your question, the FY 25 for the administrative assistants, which is grade 5, which is our grade 8. For FY 25 is 2375 to 2978.
So that's 3%.
And then,
Yes,
um,
Well, we don't know. I don't know what it was before, so.
we just had it a little bit ago. Because the top was 28 and change for you.
it was 28, 21, right? Yeah, 28, 21, the top is now 2978.
Oh, wow.
That's what
About
it is.
15
20,
-ish.
21,
I know.
70. So that's a
That's a buck 55, a buck 56.
Mm.
Okay. Hold on a minute.
Okay, sorry. I said, what's that number?
Oh,
Well, it's,
Shall we go?
it's not easy to know kind of how
Good
it
one.
actually plays
Thank
out.
you.
$1.50.
Huh?
About $1.50.
Yeah, I still $1.56. Sizable.
The max change.
Good, thank you.
So you saying that's about a 3?
Mhm.
2.75?
It's more than that. Because if the top of the range was 28.21 and now it's 29.78, that's $1.57, right? If my math is correct.
Something like that.
So $1.57 off of that, yeah,
Against back to that.
right. It's close to 5%.
I need a,
Cool.
I need a calculator.
I had
In my head.
So yeah. So 6%.
so that's dropping to
Do they recontract
steps,
every
yeah.
year for that particular?
575, sorry, 575.
And you said we're a little lower this year.
Currently,
Even with the
yeah.
2.5% we already gave.
Mhm.
A lot better.
So that swing, if we did 3% next year on their 575, and we're a little ahead of them right now, that might kind of play.
Change.
or not
Again,
that
as
much.
I was reminded when I first joined the committee, it's not always gonna be
No,
exactly here.
it's not, but
just
we're
not.
gonna try to do our best to
But,
get it.
yep,
as
no,
equitable
no,
as possible.
absolutely, absolutely.
That's the goal.
Right.
Yeah, it's not gonna be dollar for dollar.
So
And
by
as you said-
adding the change to 24, it really would have been 5.5% last year. which gives it quite a jump to move it towards the more reasonable to the other unions.
But they make up big jumps.
Well,
We're playing
That's how,
leapfrog.
yeah.
Well, that's, yeah.
it's gonna happen.
So,
So, okay, so for the next meeting, if we can have the three new scenarios laid out, pick one. And maybe do, working meeting, work together
Mhm.
to establish the 25 grid.
So I'll try to do some research this week to see what other organizations are doing. You know, if the Fed has listed something and the state has listed something that we can kind of say, this is kind of what's happened in the, so far.
Mm.
Some of them may not have named it yet.
But what we just put out, we could have FY 25 here to look at for those three scenarios.
Yes. Well,
Mm.
she needs to know the number
Yeah.
before she can do it.
that's why I'm saying,
Well,
do it with the
Well, what
three.
direction? What's the
No, with
direction?
three is what we said.
And at
To
least
look at FY
we can
25 with
get,
three.
at least we can get a dollar amount and say, well, three's too high. Let's go 2.5, right? But we need a number to start.
Yeah, so
Because we-
she could go ahead and we could say, okay, give us the grids for, because I'd like to see the grids for 24 for these scenarios.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then from there, if she or I or we know what the direction is, well, we're gonna drop another step. Well, sure, we can cost it out. What are we going to do?
But
What
need
do we
all of
want
that
to
at our
do?
next meeting?
That's what I'm
Because
saying. So
Our
what,
next meeting is gonna be is the first week in March.
so let's run out some scenarios for 25 and we can we can do it together and cost it out based on,
But all
Each
three of those
scenario.
meetings-
Three.
no, the new for the people.
Right, so
For the employee
right now we've got
positions.
the 20 grades, so I need to know, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna need to know.
Are we solid
what
that it's gonna
the
be
grades are.
They're gonna
up to
stay.
17?
Let's see who they are. I think that we do need to have a separate discussion that says which of the jobs that we've identified. We would also recommend is not to do with the grid, but to do it because we found that in our determination, they perhaps should be a higher grade.
So just reclassify those few.
And it's a few, I don't think it's.
So keep the same 16 grades, whether
Say
it starts at 2
16.
and ends at 17 or,
Yeah.
based on the scenarios here.
I
Right.
think it's a 2 to 17 versus a 1.
Yeah.
Or a
Correct.
1 to 16.
1 to 16.
And
So we'll
then-
see how these play out.
Right. And I think I would suggest that we all take a look at the work we did and say, which ones really kind of look like they should have also increased in value, not just because we did this and changed the grid, but because the work that they did has proven to be higher than we used to categorize it.
Mhm.
And
Responsibility
I
is
would
grow.
say, I think we're all in agreement on dropping one. And
Grade
the
one.
17, the 2 and 17, right?
For
So,
the grades.
Yeah.
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 I
so I
we're
don't
all
think
in
we even need
agreement
to
to
keep
that.
talking about that. It's 2 and 17.
But so for instance, I would need to know what grade, new grade my position is in.
It isn't changing right now.
Well,
for FY
scenario,
25.
I don't know if yours is gonna change for 25, but I know the grid, wherever you are in
You're
the
an
grid
outlier.
today is where you are in the grid tomorrow, unless we determine in the group of people we're gonna change, that you're in that number.
or can I go back? So scenario 2, which is going to be our third new scenario, is not dropping grade 1. It's just
Right.
adjusting the rate.
Changing.
So it's not all gonna be two of
Oh.
them will be 2 to 17, one
apologize,
will
I
be
thought-
1 to
Because
16.
what, didn't you say, what's the minimum wage there?
Ours is 15.30. The one that is on this sheet is 15.50, so 20 cents higher than our grade 2 step 1. So that's a different scenario. But I think if we cost it out in FY 25, everybody is where it is, and then we can talk through it at the next meeting who you feel needs to be reclassed to a different grade.
Right.
And hopefully that's the final step at that point, is going back and working those numbers.
So I'm gonna prepare an FY 25 grid the same way I did the FY 24 grid.
just by.
Yes,
I'm
increase
still
yes.
gonna be a 13.
For now.
For now.
yes.
That's-
Unless,
that's what I mean.
unless, yeah,
Price it out.
Unless
Agree
they
with that. Price
just
it out.
put everybody where they currently are, and then once they decide,
And if any outliers need to move grade, we already have numbers out there.
They'll just move to the.
Because
they
in
change number.
trying to reclassify, and that's what we couldn't see until we got into money and how our grid looked now, that it just, that the Winchendon system didn't come over. It just didn't. So trying to go, okay, everybody's just down 3 from before. It doesn't work.
But it was
A straight, it just isn't a
Oh,
straight
well,
line.
it was absolutely a healthy
It
thing
was
to
a
look
healthy
at.
thing for guys, because it did show us that there are some jobs that needed to be
Mhm.
looked at.
Well, and synergy and how job descriptions
Yes.
looked and read. There were many that were just lacking.
Mhm.
There were some that didn't exist, right?
Mhm.
I mean, so that needed to happen.
Yep.
At the end of the day, whether something was a current 9, an old 9 or a current 7, doesn't matter. Really, I mean, it's
yeah.
Not yet. Not yet.
it's simply, and well, it was, yeah.
That makes sense to me. I'm comfortable with that.
So what do you want for FY 25?
Adding 3%.
To all 3, to all
3%.
scenarios.
However, the grid turns out for 24, then add 25% to that, correct? For the 3 scenarios.
And
At
what-
Because they're not all
3%.
20,
Yeah, to 25.
To FY, yeah, because you said I had 25%.
25%.
I know, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Is, and that's, what's that based off of? The clerical union rates?
This way.
What is that 3% based off of? The clerical union
Yes.
rates?
I think it's keeping that in mind, but it's also looking at what's the market probably going to move in
Mm.
general.
And if it's one more opportunity to bring our grid
Slightly
to
higher.
a slightly higher place.
Not against it. I just want to understand like
Well,
the
and I think
rationale
that-
behind.
I think when we
picking
go and
three.
do some research to see what are the numbers that look like the state and the Fed, and in
Mhm.
general, if we find that that's a little different, then we'll know. But 3 isn't a bad place to start.
So
Yeah.
here's the other part of that. When we had 8 comps.
Yeah.
Some of them, certain towns, like some of them,
Some of
we're
them were
lower,
okay.
some were higher.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's just how it is. And for us, I don't think we have to be sitting at the low end everywhere. Do you know what I mean? If the goal is, in surrounding towns that are comparable to us, so that if someone comes with a level of experience, they know they're not going to Boston with that level of experience, that, and they were trying to compare the two. Let's say Lunenburg and Townsend had the same role open. I mean, if we had that bit of an edge, that's not a bad thing. And
We're
that
a much
edge
nicer place
of,
to work.
huh?
We're a much nicer place to work.
I know, I was giving a Brando example, but also to try and keep folks, because sometimes it's just that much, enough of a difference
It
that
is.
people go, no, I'm not going to.
Mhm.
But if it's that little bit lower, it could, going somewhere else could end up being that much more that they're
We
like.
could
"See ya."
decide in the end that maybe the 3 seems too high
High.
when we all.
But till we
all
see it on
said
We
and
could.
done.
paper,
We don't know.
If we look at all the
We don't
numbers,
know.
we could go, that's probably not an impact. But I mean, the other part is this has to go to town meeting floor.
Hmm.
So we're gonna do our best with this, right?
Yeah.
And we're gonna
Have
bring
to
it to the
explain it.
select board, we're gonna bring it to FinCom. Our justification, how we got here. And we could have absolutely spot on rationale for why this needs to be. And it still could go to town meeting floor and go one way or another.
It's not.
I'm just trying to see.
Did someone come on?
No, I was looking for,
I was
see if there
gonna
were
say somebody-
hands or anything. Yeah.
So does that make sense?
Because tweaks can also be suggested on town meeting floor.
So we're gonna do scenario, the second one, scenario 1, scenario 2, 24, and then 3% for 25. And see where that gets us.
Leaving everybody as is.
And we
then that
still have a
discussion-
couple outliers that once we see those numbers, we're gonna have conversations about, and if they're in the right place, where should they be?
Correct.
Yep.
And we'll
That
come
needs to
up
And
be
with-
I think
talk
that's
about that.
all doable in our next meeting.
Yeah, that needs to be prepared.
Yes,
Yep.
Bring it
We
and
need to
have
be
a
prepared.
decision, not a
Right.
Right.
back
We've
and
got
forth.
these numbers now in front of us that we could kind of
Me too.
guesstimate.
Yeah.
Okay, no, this needs to be fixed, this needs, so,
Right, because that was the other part before was, it was so much, we're not sure where the grid lies, so, you know,
and I felt before, we just kept moving people, but we weren't seeing anywhere where they.
now we
are.
know where they are.
Now we know where they are, should they be with this group or should they
And
be
if we have
hired
new
over?
numbers,
And now that I have numbers, I can see that.
Mhm.
Where before we just go, oh, no, let's make it, well, is it gonna move them a group? Okay, we'll give them 10. Oh, well, that, and we never saw where they landed,
it will be a helpful reference only.
correct?
Mhm.
Correct.
It'll
Just
be
like
more
the
helpful
survey
going
is a
forward, the new
helpful
position.
reference.
well, a
Yeah.
clean and accurate job description,
It's
that's
nice-
key.
nice to have.
That's key.
Mhm.
How can, if you can't present something accurate to
Mhm.
a prospective employee,
Well,
y-
that's why
they
it's
could
im-
turn around and leave if they get here and go, wait a minute.
Right.
There's a whole lot here that wasn't in my job description. See ya.
And that's what I've been trying to say at every meeting. It's what's in black and white. What whoever's here and says, well, but it's really this, but it doesn't say that here. So something needs to change. If you're presenting me with this job description that says, I'm just gonna make something crazy up. I supervise 4 people, but then you have, say, the department head, well, they supervise 10 people. Well, why doesn't it say 10 on here? What is it? Is it 4 or is it 10?
Well, that changes too.
Well, okay, bad example.
Yeah.
Well,
It's just,
no,
you know,
because kind of what Julie's saying is what I fluctuate, because people should be doing, especially in union, their job descriptions, right? So I have my set job description, and now my manager comes and says, can you, the assistant time work for her, can you type up the town report for me? That's not in my job description. But I don't say no, because I'm a people pleaser. So I say, okay, I'll do that. Well, then my union came and said, that's not your job function. You do not do that. It's not in your job description. You do not do that. And I said, well, I apologize. Because I'm gonna do what my boss asked me to do, because they're the one that write my emails. And I thank you,
You were trying to help out.
I thank you for sharing. But
wait,
I'm not
and
gonna
other
have that.
duties as maybe.
assigned.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not going to do that. So to now say, well, I do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, and I've been doing it for 2 years, well, that's a whole new job description that goes to town meeting approval and all of that. We can't start changing people or paying people differently, because they do that without following that process of town meeting, creating a new job, town meeting, voting on it and all of that.
So when we have positions that we voted on, those are existing positions, correct? And we're just voting to put someone in at X grade and step, correct?
Correct.
This committee.
When I bring a new hire for you, yeah, because you would have already
it's
approved
not-
that job description.
Right, but if all of a sudden the town wanted to have, I don't know, another someone else to take stuff off both of your plates and create a new
Well, we're
position,
gonna
right?
split the town administrator and
Ri-
HR.
Right,
Mm.
that would have to go to town meeting, correct?
Mm.
Cause that's a brand
new
new
position.
position.
Well, it would go before
like
us
when
and
she
then
was
go
hired.
before the board, and then the
Right.
board would take it to
Well,
town meeting.
I mean, ultimately,
Yeah, if we said, okay, we're gonna hire our own HR and have an assistant, that's now a new job
Different
description.
positions, it's, yep.
Right. And it would have to be approved in the budget, so
Right.
it's quite
Town
lengthy.
meeting, yep.
Yeah, benefits, and because now.
well, right,
all that.
that's a.
Because we will have, won't we? There are some of these jobs that were brand new that have to go in a separate approval. We've had 1 or 2 that we've added that were never in SAP. So don't they have to go to
You
get
have one,
approved?
what's the second?
I don't know. I thought there was a couple that we added. Oh, we never had that before. We'll have to add it to the SAP, and therefore it has to be approved by the town meeting.
I gotta go through the job descriptions
We'll have to
anyway,
go
'cause
through
they're
them and
still
make
in
sure.
scribble form. Mhm.
Because the job descriptions that we've rewritten,
Those have to be approved. still.
those have to be.
Yeah.
So some of them are just rewritten and amended, and some of them may be brand new.
There's gonna be a stack coming through needing approval
From
Oh,
us.
from you guys, because none of them, they're still in draft.
Yeah.
Format.
And then we added confidentiality to a lot of them
Yep.
through this process. So,
We're just
Those all
adjusting the
have to be
weight, the
updated.
physical
Right.
demands, yeah.
Okay.
All
So
right.
so now we need our timeline,
Yes.
which means we need to make our next meetings.
right, because we, and next week stinks for me.
Voting.
Ugh.
So do we know? Is
Early
select
vote and
board
vote
meeting,
often, that's what I always say.
do we know select board meeting? Yes.
March fifth,
Yes, there is a select board meeting.
yeah. There's a mass general law that says you don't meet on election day, but Lunenburg does. There is a mass general law that you don't, on state, federal elections, we don't have town meetings because we want people at the polls.
Correct.
So, but Lunenburg is having a select board meeting on,
Hi.
hey Jack, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm wondering, maybe somebody might know the magic code for the copier and
I do not,
Um,
rebel something.
we're just on TV.
Yeah,
I don't
I'm-
know if you want to yell
yeah.
it on
no,
TV.
I'm trying to, I would have
I'll
to
make
punch it
your
in.
copies down at Ritter. You got the code now.
I have to figure it out. All right, let's wrap this up
Okay.
first.
So we need,
Yeah, so
then. What's your week?
what's
look like?
today? Monday.
I'm working the polls all day.
What do they pay now?
I have no idea. It's such a small amount, I never, I don't know. I have no idea. I really don't.
You can get 23 in Pittsburgh if you want to make the job available.
It's a city. It's a city, not a town.
So
Um, so is there any way we could meet again this week, or is that too much for people?
Yeah, I
Okay.
can't do
All right.
Wednesday and
can't
Thursday. I couldn't be here till
Okay.
7, and that's murderous for me.
I can't do anything till next Thursday,
I can't do next.
because Monday I've got license, Tuesday election, and Wednesday city council. So I could do Thursday of next week. That's the only day I could do.
I
can
can only
do
do
that.
Monday next week.
I don't know when Dawn's been.
I'm not sure of that either.
I would think.
She's gone at least a week, I'm
I think a
sure.
I
Yeah.
think she's due back.
So if we want to take next week
Well-
off and do the following week, I don't have meetings.
We do the
Monday
11th
or
and
Tuesday.
13th.
When do we need to go to, it's the 18th?
Mhm.
Yeah.
19th?
Has to be
So we
submitted.
want.
I'm
it
not
all-
here the 18th or the 19th.
We want it all wrapped up by the 13th is our goal.
So we could do the 11th and 13th.
So I can do the 11th.
I can do the 11th
I can do the 11th.
and
That's
13th.
Monday. I can do both. I can do both.
So Monday, March 11th at 5 PM,
Mhm.
and the room will be on the agenda when,
I
And we don't
assume
know if it'll be
here,
Zoom.
I don't know.
we'll
that
know all
yet.
that when the agenda gets posted.
13th.
Next Wednesday.
Okay? And, that's the 11th. So where's that? The 13th, that Friday?
Wednesday.
Wednesday?
Yeah. We'll do the same. We'll tentatively
do
set
Monday,
it just in
Wednesday.
case, yeah.
Perfect. Donna will be back and
Yeah.
you'll still be.
And
at home.
will we absolutely need it? We probably will to some degree, I'm
Yeah.
thinking.
Mhm.
I think so.
Or if
I
we're
don't think.
closed, I would say
Saturday
on the
would-
11th,
yeah,
if
but
we're
I-
closed, we might have to stay longer than 7.
If
if-
we're, yeah, oh,
you know what
yeah,
I'm
I have
saying?
no problem
If
with that if
if
it
we're
takes out
kinda
the
close, We'll
13th.
just stay
Right. We'll
and
finish it.
try to
We'll
finish
just-
it.
That's
right?
perfectly fine.
Yep,
Perfect.
I would rather do
Okay,
that.
do you guys have anything else before we go to public comment?
After that, what's our process? The following week?
Well, then we'll have to get on finance. We'll have the numbers for the retro, we'll have the numbers for FY 24-5, and we'll have to go in front of finance and select board and discuss our warrant article with them.
That's the following week, correct?
Well, that they schedule that 2 or 3 different meetings, so that's not a.
But I
They,
thought we had to have it by,
we have to have it for her to go to print. But we'll be meeting with the select board and finance between March and the
I
May
got it.
meeting.
I got it.
but it's for them to get those books printed.
Got
that
it,
we
got
have.
it, got it. Okay, so that's our deadline, no problem.
Yes. That's her deadline.
Okay.
Heather's deadline, I don't wanna say her. It's the
Okay.
18th, and I said we'll get it done by the
Yeah,
13th.
oh, yeah, yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna, anything else before I go into comments? Okay, do we have any public comment? Nancy?
So Pauline had asked about the history of the grid adjustments for the salary and then plan, and I went back. And from FY 12 to FY 17, there was absolutely no adjustment at all. No COLA, no nothing. Same. in
The
both.
grid didn't move.
Not for those 5 years. A grid was created for FY 18, which was an 8.6% increase. Probably to make up for
The
the
five.
6 years. After that, it was a 2% COLA until FY 23. And then adjustments were made to grades 1 through 5 because we were so behind minimum wage. And the rest was a 2% COLA, and last year was a 2.5% COLA. So
So when you use the word COLA, it's also a grid change. It's the same thing. You're changing the grid by 2.5%. You're not really, it's a
It-
COLA for grade step 8. And a grid change for everybody.
well,
I
they're
thought
The steps,
two
yeah.
separate things, really. I
they're
mean,
two separate things.
But the
COLA
grid
is,
is what changes, not just an outright COLA. I don't think we've done just an outright COLA, except for if you happen to be in step 8. We changed the grid by 2% or changed the grid by 2.5%.
But it's considered a COLA for everybody, so everybody would get the 2.5% COLA.
I
As
see,
far
I
as
think that
changing-
2.5 last year was the COLA.
Yes,
Mhm.
it was.
It's a
I
grid
thought it
change. It's a
It's not a
change.
grid change. COLA is cost of living
I know,
assessment, then every year or 2 years based on performance and how your grid goes, I get a grid increase and I can move up or I can move across. As my years, every 2 years, I go into the next bucket. And you keep going.
I think
They're
you're
two
saying the same, see, I
he's saying
think you're saying the same thing,
He's saying
because the COLA does adjust the
grid.
grid. You're not staying, the rates, the ranges are changing.
it isn't like
But
you say
I
to
think
everybody, we're just gonna give you a 2.5% increase and don't touch anything else.
Yeah.
You're touching the grid.
I
You're
think-
changing the grid.
The grid change that Pauline was talking about, what you're talking about too, is more adjustments outside of the COLA.
Right.
Yeah.
Something above
So
the
that-
2
yeah.
or 2.5%.
Mhm.
That was last done on FY 23, but only to grades 1 through 5. And before that, it was FY 18.
So last year,
FY 23.
23,
Mhm.
when we went to the select board and we said everybody was gonna get the 2.5, which I thought was COLA.
Mhm.
Not everybody in SAP got that, just people on steps 1 through 5.
No, FY 24, everybody got the
Okay.
2.5.
Thank you.
FY 23 was the grades 1 through 5.
I stopped at
adjustments.
23 writing. I don't know why, sorry. Cause that's what.
Because when we were approaching FY 23, we were hopeful we were gonna go to special town meeting.
Mhm.
And we were gonna go retro, and we were only gonna have to go retro back from November
No, I
to
remember, yeah, I said it twice.
July.
Not once.
That was why we had no movement, because we were gonna,
Yeah, cause I did FinCom in town meeting and Sue and Donna went to select board.
Nancy, would you just, was FY 24 2.5 or 2?
2.5.
I just didn't want to write it down.
And that was everybody. 24 was everybody.
The grid, yeah, the whole grid.
Okay. Paul, you have any? No. And did anybody have their hand? I can't
don't
see. the
see
TV.
it. The
No.
TV.
All right, then. With that, I would make a motion to adjourn. Well, accept a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry. Is there any committee comment? Seeing none, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn 6:29 PM.
Second.
Great job. Thank you.
We're going to take a vote on that.
All in favor of this? We don't have to roll call. Aye,
Aye.
passes unanimously. I roll call vote.